Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the AeroCool Player, a mid-tower case with some very quirky features. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we're taking a look at the AeroCool Player. This is a ATX mid-tower, suitable for micro ATX builds, should you wish to as well, and obviously ITX and all that kind of stuff. Measurement wise, we're looking at 480mm high, 420 nice deep, and 205mm for the width. Now the first thing that's striking about this particular case is the design. So we've got a very kind of almost Xboxy kind of console type look going on at the front here. There's a piece of tempered glass, as you can probably see already, and also we've got a tempered glass side panel. Also, there is a rather nice addressable RGB light which runs down through this front section, and also something which is extremely unusual is the fact that we've got our I/O panel on the side here. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's not necessarily unusual, there are other cases that do it, but it's also illuminated with addressable RGB and actually looks pretty cool. I think it's a very unusual look. It may not be to everybody's taste, but that is a beauty with building a computer. Not everything has to be just a plain beige box, or black box for that matter these days. Anyway, we're going to go through today, we're going to do a teardown of the case so you can see what it's all about, look at some of the other quirky features. There is something else on here which I've never seen on another case before. Whether it's necessary or not, I'm not entirely sure, but it's certainly quite interesting. We won't be doing a full build in this particular video. There will be a follow-up video where we'll be doing a build, going through doing airflow testing, all that kind of stuff, because airflow is going to be something which a lot of you are probably concerned about already, and potentially why you may have passed on this case already. Looking at the airflow from the front, there kind of basically isn't a great deal. There's some very, very, very small slits that run along the actual sides here, which kind of almost irrelevant. There also is a blank section at the bottom where your grab handle is. That is kind of effectively where all of your airflow is going to come in, basically from this front panel and a little bit from the sides. Now, certainly for those of you that don't mind getting a little bit busy with a Dremel or some kind of crafting tool, the sides actually, because of the slits in them, look absolutely perfect for cutting out. So you could get your Dremel on there, cut some slots out to aid the airflow. To be honest with you, I don't think it's really going to need it. This works in a very similar way to something like the NZXT S340, where you are relying somewhat on negative air pressure, which actually does really well for the graphics card. CPU wise, probably not so much, but again, you could potentially put in an AIO radiator in the top to rectify that sort of thing anyway. Anyway, I'm wittering on, so let's go through and do a breakdown of this and see what it's all about. And I should say, first of all, thank you so much to Ugly Bob for sending this over to us to take a look at. Much appreciated and very unexpected. And yeah, it's a really nice contrast to what we normally see, the kind of typical mesh-fronted airflow boxes. So yeah, it's nice to see something a little bit different. Anyway, let's move on. So on the side, we have got a tempered glass side panel, as you can see. There is a relatively dark tint to the glass as well. So again, some people may prefer that. I actually quite like it, especially on a slightly more budget offering. It does tend to darken things out, so if you're using components on there which maybe aren't totally top end, then it will hide them quite nicely. The thumb screws are really nice large thumb screws, and there are rubber mountings which hold the glass in place, so even if you do actually unscrew all of the mountings at once, then the glass panel doesn't want to come out, so it actually does have a really nice fit in there, compression fit between this bottom section and the top ledge. Taking the glass off, relatively straightforward, just pull it away from the actual chassis, and you can see they have put some black borders on there, so if you do get your fingers on there, it's not going to show the fingerprints from the reverse side. So with the side panel off, now we can take a better look inside, and actually it is pretty cavernous inside. In terms of what you can fit in there, graphics card wise, depending on what you're doing, if you're putting an AIO in here with fans on the inside, then you're looking around about 300mm for your GPU. If you're just going with some fans up front, you're looking about 325mm for your graphics card. If you're not going to put anything in front at all, then you could potentially put a graphics card up to somewhere in the region of about 375mm, which is kind of insane. When it comes to CPU, that is going to be the one which is going to draw you back a little bit. We have got a maximum height clearance on the CPU of about 160mm. I think it's 159 they quoted. 160mm you probably could get away with. There are quite a few coolers on the market which come in at that magical 160mm mark, so you potentially could get those in. Depending on your motherboard, it's a millimeter difference. That is one of the downsides of this particular case, other than obviously not having a kind of full open mesh front, which is going to restrict airflow. I think really this is designed for an AIO cooler, of which you can put up to 360mm in the front, you can put up to 280mm in the top, or a 120mm on the back. And obviously when it comes to fans as well, if you take off the front panel, which actually we should do after we look at the IO, we'll do that next. We'll also take a look at the rest of the fan situation. The IO is the kind of the real crazy thing. So obviously you've got a load of room in here anyway, but the IO, this is going to be a make or break for some people. Now, a lot of people like their IO to be on the top because it's either out of the way or if they've got the PC on the floor, which you probably shouldn't do, but it's nice and easy to access the ports. But actually being on this side, if you've got your PC in some kind of cubicle, then you're not going to be able to gain access to this, which could be a little bit of a problem, especially if you've got a USB stick or Wi-Fi dongle sticking out. That could be an absolute nightmare. But for a lot of people, and included me, like if I had it behind me, then it'd be really nice just to gain access to the IO on the side there. So that's really cool. You have got two USB 3.0 ports on there. You've got a separate microphone and headphone jack. You've got an RGB button, which we'll take a look at later. Basically, you press that and you can cycle through the RGB colors, as you do with a lot of cases these days. And at the top, you've got a nice clicky power button. Absolutely brilliant. I actually really do like the layout. It's very similar to one of the InWin cases from a while back. I'm not sure exactly the model, but it does have that kind of InWin-y kind of feel to it, although this is considerably cheaper. You can pick this up at the moment somewhere in the region of about £40 here in the UK. Amazon.co.uk is available elsewhere. I'll put some links in the video description so you can check out your local pricing. But yeah, it's a great setup. So we should finish off the inside. So inside wise, you've got a really nice bit of clearance between the actual motherboard and where the top section is. And also there's some big cutouts at the top. So for putting wires through for radiators, fans, etc. Absolutely no problem at all. Nice to have that big gap there. So even if you do put a big radiator which drops down a little bit, even some of the Arctic cooling ones, they're going to fit in there. You're not going to impede on your motherboard too much at all, especially if you go with a 240mm because it's going to be offset as well, making it even better. You do get an included fan as well. We've got a AeroCool fan in the back. I did some recording earlier to give you some fan noise examples, and basically it's silent. It's actually quieter than the power supply fan that I had in there. So yeah, virtually no noise at all, but unfortunately along with no noise at all comes basically almost zero airflow. So that kind of sums up this case a little bit. Yeah, the fan that's included, yes, it's nice that it's included. It's not RGB or anything. It's just a cheap and cheerful. It's got a 3-pin DC connection or a Molex, so you could leave it in a Molex connector, leave it permanently at full blast, and you'll never even know it's on, but it's not really going to do a great deal of good. Potentially, you might even want to reverse it to have a negative airflow setup. So if you've got a radiator on the top pushing out, have that actually bringing cool air in. That might work out for some people. Got some nice pass-throughs on the bottom, nice big chunky pass-throughs, solid basement section. I do like that. I am quite a big fan of that. I don't really like the meshy type bottoms. Some people do, some people don't. I personally don't. I think that is a much cleaner solution. The rear I/O section, the top PCI Express blanket plate is removable. The rest are all fold-out ones, which is a little bit of a shame, but not a particular problem. Moving towards the front more so you've got some mounting sections here, which probably can't really see too well in that light. Hopefully there's some decent B-roll so you can see what it is. So two 2.5 inch drives can be mounted either on the front or the back there, whichever way you want to do it. It's entirely up to you. And there's a nice big chunky cutout at the bottom, so if you are putting that 360mm radiator up front, you've got enough room for the radiator and the fans before you start impeding actually on the chassis itself. With that, let's take a look actually behind the front section so you can see what it's all about. The front section comes off nice and easily, so it's just a quick grab of the handle on the bottom and give it a quick tug, and the whole thing comes off, leaving you with this, which is going to be captive because obviously you've got front I/O on there, so it is going to be captive no matter what you do. But they've managed the cables quite nicely, and it goes through this channel into the rest of the section, so it's absolutely fine. Potentially it could interfere with, if you have a top fan in here, from the 360mm rad, so obviously when you're putting that back in, make sure that it's not going to impede on that fan. You do actually get to see the bottom two fans through the glass. As you can see, there is a glass section there, tempered glass, which is tinted a little bit. So if you do have fans in the bottom, sort of RGB ones, that kind of stuff, you are going to get a little bit of a glow from them. Something which isn't particularly great is the way that they've got the mountings on the front. So if we take a look at the front section here, so they've got cutouts in place. It is 120mm fans or bust, essentially. So 3 120mm fans, 360mm radiator, 140mm fans. You could probably put in there somehow, but you'd only be able to mount them possibly in certain areas, so I would probably advise against that. But overall, yeah, it seems okay. The metal cutouts there because of where they are and how thin they are, they're never going to be the strongest, but they do seem to be okay. And even putting a decent amount of pressure on, they don't want to bend or anything. They do flex a little bit, but yeah, it's absolutely fine. So yeah, this section is kind of okay, but it does give you the option again, if you want to, these side sections here, because there is a nice bit of plastic there, you could cut some slits out of there to give you a little bit more airflow, but essentially you're going to get full unrestricted airflow from this bottom section and those very, very tiny slits down the sides there. So now we're going to take a look at the rear, so to speak, and we've got obviously usual layout. So you've got rounded off section here for I/O shield, you've got your section here for 120mm fans, a little bit of movement up and down should you wish to, honeycomb mesh effect, like that a lot, best for airflow. Then you've got 7 expansion bays down here. You've also got the PCI Express blanking section here, which is done in a particularly nice way. I like that, that works very well. Then you've got your section at the bottom for your power supply. But some of you, the eagle-eyed amongst you, and I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 of you out there, you'll probably notice there's 2 screws here. You're probably thinking, what are those 2 screws for, Mike? Well, I'll tell you what they're for. Actually, better still, I will actually show you. I'll grab a screwdriver. So if you remove these 2 screws on the back, and also another single screw on the inside, you would have to remove the glass in order to do this, obviously. So spin that round. There is an additional screw on the top here. Let's get rid of that also. And then, this is a very ingenious part. I actually like this quite a lot. Is this bit just pushes to the side and pulls out. So if you want to get in to do anything, some cable management perhaps, maybe your power supply is a little bit on the large side, or you can't get the cables to go where you want them to, you can just run them around the front, which I think is actually a really cool idea. I don't know why they've done it, and I don't think there's any real need for it potentially, or at least nothing that really springs to mind. But the fact that that side is effectively then completely open for you to mount things in, run cables through, whatever you want to do, I think it's actually just a really cool design. I'm pretty sure the whole tooling for this particular case is for various different models, because there's lots of little things which kind of give you the idea that it's designed for something else. There is kind of a mounting rail on the back for maybe a 5 1/4 inch drive to go in the front here, which clearly you can't because there's that panel in the way. But yeah, certain other things as well on the bottom we'll take a look at later as well, which kind of give you the idea that maybe this is kind of like a multi-purpose function unit. This bit, nice, decent quality construction. So again, if you want to get access to there, you can do, and put it back in, just slot it in, put your screws back in, and you're good to go. I'll leave that actually as it is for now. So that is the back section, and this kind of tricky little bit going on here. Let's take a look at the back section. So you've got a standard flat panel on there, which is always nice to see. Don't like to have those weird panels where they've got bulges in, just so you can actually manage your cables. Side panel's okay, a little bit flimsy, but not the worst. And then that reveals the rest of the setup here. So like I said before, we've got some 2 massive cutouts there. So for your radiators, fans, etc. at the top, or for passing through EPS connector, super simple. Even if you've got an 8-pin one, that's going to go through there extremely easily. Lots of room in the top for working with. I do like that a lot. Also, you've got some rounded off edges at the top there for passing cables through from maybe your AIO, addressable RGB lighting, etc., etc. Something I said earlier about this tooling being made for possibly other cases, that is evident in a few places, such as here. So there are channels there, which you would guess would be for mounting 2 2.5 inch drives. There are no sleds included, and in the documentation there's nothing which suggests that you can use those, but clearly on a different model you definitely could have done. The actual mounting place for your SSDs are going to be here and here, so these are sticking out slightly, so you stick your SSD on there, put some screws through from the other side, or alternatively if you want to put your SSDs on show, stick them on the other side, screw through that way, whichever you want to do. Isn't really going to impede much on the cabling for the front panel connection, because that can still be kind of tucked down the side here and still have plenty of room for your drives, which is awesome. Again, here you can see there's the screw holes for what would have been for 5.5 inch drive base, optical disk drives, that kind of stuff, which clearly are not the case in this case. Moving down to the bottom, so again, you've got some sections here, loads of pop-outs and punch-outs for cable management. Room in the bottom for 2 3.5 inch drives. You can't put 2.5 inch drives in there because there isn't CADIs as such, although the actual frame of this does give you the idea that you potentially could have had CADIs, little plastic ones that slotted in, because there is kind of runners there, but again, possibly on another case. Power supply wise is one that might trip out a few people. Potentially power supply wise, there isn't a great deal of room down here. I've measured from this particular bar to the back here as being 200 millimeters. So kind of 165mm power supply is probably about the most you want to go to. You could obviously, if you're not using those drives, you could get the drill out the rivets, remove that cage altogether. It is riveted in and it is going to provide some form of structural rigidity. So maybe just remove out this bar rather than both of them. Potentially you could do that. It's all filtered nicely, nice open section on the bottom. There is a grill and also you've got some rubber standoffs there to absorb vibrations from your power supply. I've got some shots earlier from B-roll we've probably seen already anyway, with a 140mm power supply, which is kind of like the normal ATX size or the standard ATX size, 140mm. That fits in there fine and you could stuff some wires in. No big deals there at all. And also power supply fitted in quite nicely and still gives you enough room to pass through your USB cables. Speaking of which, that was a very good introduction. So the I/O is actually unusual, very unusual. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so sparse in terms of front panel connection. So kind of, that's it. Power switch. That's the only one you got to hook up on your motherboard. So that's awesome because there's going to be no fiddling around with reset switch, hard drive activity, power on lights, all that kind of stuff. Literally one connection. That's pretty awesome. I do like that. Yeah, that's cool. Bit weird, but very cool. Also, there is a SATA power connection. Now that's going to be for powering all of the addressable RGB. This is built into the system. We'll talk about that again after I've done the rest of these. There is a bit of odd quirk about that also. You've got two USB 3.0 ports on the front, as we've seen earlier. So there is your standard connection for that. And you've got your HD audio connection again, nice and long. So even if it needs to pass all the way over here, it's going to be absolutely fine. Now going back to the addressable RGB side of it, because that is it. There is nothing else. So the RGB is a standalone system. And it is so standalone in fact that you cannot add to it. You cannot detract from it. That is, it is what it is. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll get a motherboard and I'll synchronize all my RGB, you won't. Well, it's unlikely you will, unless you select a static color, in which case you'd be absolutely fine. So I just wanted to put that out there. There isn't a 3-pin 5V addressable RGB header or even a 12V RGB header or anything like that. Literally, it's a fully enclosed system. You can't do anything with it at all. No synchronization other than what you can do from the button on the front, which we'll be showing you a little bit later on. So with that said, let's have a look at the bottom section. So as you can see, you've got 4 feet there raising up a little bit, which is going to be obviously useful because that is your kind of main airflow coming in the front there. On the back, you've got a removable filter, usual kind of thing, just a flimsy pinch out or punch out bit. I'm not sure what they call that. Yeah, so it's just a metal filter, nothing overly exciting. You've got that bit there, rubberized feet on the bottom to stop it moving around on the desk and also to absorb vibrations. So yeah, that's all well and good. Moving around to the top section, so we've got another filter, basically the same as the bottom one. There are magnets on it, some of the thinnest and skinniest magnets I've ever seen, so they've saved a few quid there, I guess. But this is really nice hexagonal mesh, which we always do appreciate. Space in here for two 120mm fans or two 140mm fans, nicely offset from the motherboard as well, even though it is raised up anyway. So yeah, you can have tons and tons of clearance there. 280mm AIO is the largest they recommend. I don't think you could fit a 360 in there, even with some creativity. I think you're going to struggle with that, but yeah, 240, 280 is going to be absolutely fine, or two 120mm fans, two 140mm fans. Okay, so there you go. There is it with the RGB powered up. So we've just got a power supply over there. The fan is actually running as well. That's connected currently on a Molex, and yeah, it's basically silent. There's not a lot of power to it. It's fine. It's free. Well, I guess it's kind of free in respect that there's no obvious extra cost involved. There may be. I don't entirely know. But I think what you'll see now is the whole thing about the RGB. So the RGB thing is very, very cool. I like it a lot. So the look of this on the front, recessed into that channel, I think it looks absolutely spectacular. I really do. And if I reach around here, find the RGB button there. Oh no, that one there. And then you can press that button and you can change through the RGB. So you've got pretty much the usual stuff we're all used to. So you've got the unicorn puke, which you saw first of all. Then you've got this kind of blue and purpley kind of thing going on. Then you've got a multi-color wave. Then you've got your kind of breathing in and out. So this can go through the reds, green, blue, white, yellow, magenta, etc, etc. You get the general idea there, so if you want to select that you can do. Next one is like more colourful flow, quite a fast one. And then you've got a similar sort of thing again, so going through the various colours. Then you've got your statics, so you've got red. This looks a little bit orange on screen, I do know. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's with the camera settings. The red for the Superman logo looks fine, but the red on this, in real life, actually looks the same colour. It doesn't look the same colour, so I'm not sure what goes on there, but anyway, it is red, not orange. Then you've got green, then you've got your blue, then you've got your white. The white's actually quite a nice clean white, a little bit heading into the blue. Then you've got your kind of acidic yellow. Then you've got your palish blue. Then you've got pink or magenta. And then back to our unicorn puke. So there you go. Overall, it's a very unusual case. There's lots of things going on in this case which kind of are puzzling in some ways. I guess because it's been repurposed in some way from a previous design, they've kind of probably just got the front panel design, done all that, and then attached it to the case. But yeah, it ticks a lot of boxes. Having that raised height over the motherboard is definitely a positive, so you can put radiators and stuff in there. It's just a generally all-round, it's been well thought out, I think, in my personal opinion. There's nothing which really stands out and says, that's a definite no-no. The only things I would say that are potentially a little bit off-putting, obviously, the fact that there isn't a full kind of mesh airflow or some sort of increased airflow at the front could be potentially awkward for some people if you're using a particularly high-end system in this. Realistically, I think most people, this is going to be appeal to kind of system integrators, flippers, that kind of people. If you've got a slightly older system and you're trying to sell it on for a quick buck, this is going to definitely generate some interest. And because it is unique, I've not seen anything like it on the market. I really haven't. It does, it does definitely stand out. And you can put in there ATX motherboard, no problem at all. Cable management is going to be absolutely fine. There's plenty of room to work with. Power supply wise, you might want to think about power supply, going for something a little bit on the more squat side. So even maybe SFX power supply. You don't need to. I've clearly put in a 140mm in there, it's absolutely fine, but do check your measurements on your power supplies beforehand. Otherwise you may struggle a little bit with the cable management. Although, obviously, if you do struggle with the cable management, then you can just out the front panel, take that out of the way, and that's going to give you access through the side so you can run your cables through the other way. And yeah, it's going to be absolutely fine. So yeah, overall, awesome little case. I'm actually looking forward to building it, see how it all goes. I'm not entirely sure what to put in it at the moment, so let us know in the comment section what you think would be an appropriate kind of level of equipment to put in here, or would you want me to try and just put in as much as I possibly can to fill it right up and see if it chokes to death or not. I'm not sure. Let me know in the comment section below. But again, thanks to Ugly Bob for sending this one for review purposes. I think that's going to wrap this one up. Any comments or questions, stick them in the comment section below. But for now, I'll be Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and how to. And hopefully, we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.